we look at dolphins, we don't usually think their skin can tell us anything about their lives. But with Amazon River dolphins, their pink coloration can offer some really fascinating clues about the lives they've lived. So today I wanted to explore their world a little bit more, while I bring these 3 perspectives to life through colorful dots. Unlike the dolphins we're probably most familiar with, Amazon River dolphins are freshwater mammals that live in South America. The Amazon is home to thousands of different species, and because it's such a complex environment, there are so many animals living in ways that I honestly never really thought about before I started this piece. And the Amazon River dolphin, also known as the bato, is one of them. Something I found really interesting right away was that just like marine dolphins, they're actually born gray. But as they grow and mature, many of them develop that pink coloration they're so well known for. I don't know about you, but I truly thought they were born pink. And that's actually what inspired the color palette for this piece. Most of my work focuses on real species, but with more imaginative color palettes. But for this piece, I really wanted to explore with the pink palette and see if I could bring these 3 perspectives to life. Even though I wanted to keep the overall color scheme pink, I still wanted each perspective to have its own personality. So I played around with different shades and how I could use them to make each view feel a little different. Before I started researching them, I honestly didn't think much about their skin. But the more I learned, the more I realized there was actually a story behind it. Amazon river dolphins have relatively thin skin. As they grow, they experience injuries from interactions with other dolphins, along with the normal challenges of living in their environment. Because their skin is so thin, the blood vessels underneath will expand as they grow. As those wounds heal, the skin can develop more of that pink coloration they're known for. So their coloring can actually be connected not only to their age, but also to the experiences they've had throughout their lives. And honestly, I thought that was pretty cool. Their skin can almost give you a little glimpse into their life story. That was when I realized there was much more to these dolphins than just the fact that they're pink. But before I get too far into all of the things I learned about batos, I do want to talk a little bit about what I'm doing here with the colors, because I know I've gotten some questions about my process. As you probably noticed, when I started laying down the first dots, I started with green instead of pink. And that's because I found that layering different shades, specifically an opposite shade of my main color, helps bring the work to life and adds more depth and texture to the piece. It definitely does take me longer, but I honestly think the extra time is worth it. I really noticed a difference between the work I was creating when I first started and the work I'm creating now, and a lot of that has come from experimenting with how I layer my colors. So I wanted to give a little insight into that process because I know it probably looked a little strange when I was talking about creating a pink dolphin, but I started with green dots. As I continued to place these dots, I also wanted to discover more about the bato and their world. So I would go back and forth between working on the piece and researching this fascinating dolphin. Batos stay with their mothers for several years as they learn to navigate the complex underwater world and learn how to hunt for food. Once they're on their own, they have some really unique adaptations that help them survive in the tangled root systems of the Amazon River. As I was researching them, I came across the idea that they had terrible vision, but I learned that that isn't true at all. Even though they have very small eyes, they have pretty good vision, both below and above the water. And similarly to marine dolphins, they use echolocation, which helps them hunt and find food in the dark, murky waters. They also have these long snouts with hair-like bristles, which act like sensory whiskers. This helps them to sense for food when they're digging around in the sand along the riverbank. Something else I found really fascinating was that these dolphins are definitely not picky eaters. They, in fact, have a wide-ranging diet that can include everything from fish to turtles. And because they have molar-like teeth, kind of like us, it allows them to crush harder foods. But I think what actually shocked me the most was learning that piranhas are part of their diet. I don't know about you, but I really just never imagined a dolphin eating a piranha. But even though I was learning so much, I often found myself questioning this art piece. I wasn't sure about the colors, and I really wasn't sure about the layering or how I was blending the colors together. And I honestly kept wondering if I should step away, because it was taking me a lot longer than I expected. And that honestly is something I've struggled with before. Sometimes I'll get to a point where I'm questioning the direction of a piece so much that I just want to stop working on it. But I really didn't want to do that for this one, so I kept going. But I honestly think because I was learning while creating, it really helped me not to give up. Because every time I found something new, it gave me another reason to come back to the artwork. And that's probably one of my favorite things about my process. The artwork isn't really separate from the research for me. They kind of happen together. The more I learned about the bato, the more I started to understand just how much they've adapted to their environment. Unlike many other dolphins, they have unfused vertebrae, which allows them to move their necks up to a 90-degree angle. And that makes it much easier for them to maneuver around roots and branches as they hunt, especially when they move inland during the rainy seasons. They also have these paddle-like fins that help them swim and make quick changes in direction with a lot of precision. We all know that dolphins can jump out of the water, but did you know Amazon river dolphins can swim upside down and backwards? I had no clue how agile they really were. But I think one of the most interesting things I learned was that they can actually move their fins independently of one another. So one fin can move forward while the other moves backward, allowing them to make quick turns when they need to. I just think it's really fascinating how every species seems to have its own unique way of adapting to life. And honestly, the more I learn about different species, the more I appreciate just how different life can be, depending on the environment you're living in. I've talked a lot about these fascinating freshwater mammals, but I also want to take some time to share why this work is so important to me. When I was a young girl, I always wanted to work with animals, and for a time, I actually did get to work with all kinds of animals, from reptiles to birds to all kinds of mammals. But that time in my life eventually had to come to an end. And before I could find my way back to working with animals again, I fell and developed CRPS, which has greatly limited what I'm physically able to do. But through my art, I have found that I can still connect with wildlife, just in a different way. My art has become a way for me to connect with species around us, explore their worlds, and gain a deeper appreciation for the animals we share this earth with. When I was little, I remember hearing about a pink dolphin that lived in the Amazon, but I honestly didn't realize how remarkable they really were. And although I don't have access to meet them in person, creating this piece is my way of exploring their world. And through this process, I really developed so much love and admiration for these dolphins. And I hope you found some of that appreciation for them too. Because these dolphins don't just have incredible anatomy, they also have so much personality. If you ever get the chance to encounter them, you might see them playing with fish, turtles, and even snakes. They've also been known to steal paddles from canoes. I just love learning little things like that because it reminds you that these aren't just interesting animals to study. They're living animals with their own behaviors and personalities. And the more I learn about them, the more I also start to understand how important it is that we protect them. Amazon river dolphins face a number of threats, including being used as bait for catfish fisheries and being viewed as competition for fish. And when you learn how incredibly specialized these animals are, it really makes you think about what we could potentially lose if we're not careful. They've adapted to this incredibly complex environment in so many fascinating ways, and they're a part of an ecosystem that is already facing so many pressures. It's my hope that my art can spark conversations about species like these, especially species that are becoming increasingly endangered. Because I think sometimes we don't realize what we're at risk of losing until we take the time to actually learn about it. When I started this piece, I really didn't expect to learn as much about Amazon river dolphins as I did. I knew them as the pink dolphins from the Amazon, and I honestly thought they were just born pink. But the more I researched them, the more I realized how much there was to learn. From their coloration and their anatomy, to the way they move through their environment, and even their personalities. And that's really what I hope to do with these art pieces. I want to take a species that maybe you've heard of before, or maybe you've never heard of at all, and spend a little bit more time looking at them. Because the more I learn about different species, the more I realize how little we know about the animals we share this planet with. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about creating these pieces. It gives me the opportunity to learn about these animals, create something inspired by what I've learned, and hopefully pass a little bit of that curiosity along to someone else. So this is my little tribute to the Botto, and I'm really glad I took the time to learn more about them. I hope you found a deeper appreciation for them too, and maybe you'll continue discovering all there is to know about these incredible dolphins. And if diving into different species while watching dot work come alive is something you enjoyed, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next species world.